What up YouTube, BonzEye here, back with another video. This is going to be the part 2 or 3 maybe of my Yumi Story podcast. And today I'm excited to have on a new guest, Pili Ipu Peipul. He's a producer sort of content. I guess he'll give more details about it when he talks. So if you all can remember my guest that I keep recurring guests from this channel, Alan. I basically met Pili Peipul through him. So Alan invited me to the Mostly of Kids Theatre one time, and I overheard Pili talking about his experience trying to produce content for Papua New Guinea. And I was basically sort of inspired, and I thought it was very interesting, and I wanted to have him on so we could talk about his experiences and stuff like that, and share with the rest of you guys about content creation in PNG, and just have a discussion along those lines. So yes, Pili, take it away. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, you already introduced me. I just want to say thanks for having me on your podcast. I've actually been following you for a little while now, actually a couple of weeks. It's really good what you do, and I'm honored to be one of your first guests as well. So, I'm a producer. I produce a lot of different things. Mainly, I would say I produce digital content, which could be like music videos, could be like television advertisements, could be like online advertisements as well, which is short form. But in terms of long form, that's more like you'd see like TV programs, documentaries, short films, movies, and that sort of stuff. That's pretty much what I have kind of fallen into the last few years in Papua New Guinea. I would say the last decade or so. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure.
I guess what sort of got you into the whole content producing? What was initially the thing that sort of inspired you to choose to go down this line of work, basically?
Good question. It's been a while now. I've been doing this for probably over 20 years. When I came out of high school, that was back in the late 90s, I knew I didn't want to be an engineer, even though I could have been. I was told by my guidance counselors and my teachers to apply to UPNG, to study architecture or even civil works. And then I didn't really want to do that because I was kind of boring. Everybody was doing that. Either that or becoming lawyers and accountants. Which, I respect what they do, but I can't do that.
Personally,
I've always been a creative person. I've always been a fan and aficionado of the arts, particularly cinema and music and that sort of stuff. And I was fortunate enough to come from more of a comfortable kind of background when I was younger as well. So I didn't really necessarily have to really struggle. Probably as I would imagine most other Papua New Guineans would have, especially in the 90s, although things were a lot cheaper back then. And there were, I think, a lot more opportunities because there was less of us around. Papua New Guineans, So from high school, I was able to actually get a scholarship, or rather a grant, from one of the mining petroleum resource companies. And I was able to go to Australia and study film and television production. And I got a diploma in that. It took me about 2 years. And then I worked for the later part of, I think it was 1999. I worked at ABC. I worked at
ABC.
Yep, ABC, Australian Broadcasting Corporation. And then I worked, did some stints with SBS. It was very popular in the 90s with the male Papua New Guineans, because they liked to watch SBS back then because they had a lot of unedited stuff back in the days. I'm sure you guys, all the guys will know what I'm talking about. I did some work with some freelance companies while I was down in Australia. I worked with film mainly. Digital video hadn't come around back then. We were just getting the digital cassettes, mini DV. I don't know, probably you guys, most of you have heard of it.
DVD tape set.
The little DVD tapes, the small ones you fit into cameras, that was the medium that we started working on. But our editing systems were still analog. Analog meaning not digital, meaning not computerized. So we'd have to use these big cassettes, and we'd have to put it into a deck, and then we'd have to make a copy onto another cassette, and another cassette, and then edit the footage from this one. It was insane. It was crazy. It was time consuming. And now the editing software and stuff you guys have on your phones and on your laptops, and online as well.
It's so much more easier to do.
Yeah, that's the NL is the non-linear. That's all digital now. So, but it was fantastic being in Australia at the time because I got to meet a lot of people. A lot of people don't know this, but I was part of the cleanup crew that worked on the Matrix. The first original Matrix was filmed in Sydney. So I was in school in Sydney. That course I was doing at a small college back in the 90s, late 90s. A lot of that work you do practical to get assessed for it. So I actually got to be part of a team that we used to clean up after the first. So on a movie set, a big professional movie set, millions and millions of dollars, you have more than one camera crew shooting. So you'll have your principal camera, which is usually the A team. They're the ones that will film all the big actors. And then you have your B team. They're the ones that will film like car chases or people like walking through doors or jumping off buildings and that. It usually won't be the main guys because the main characters
or something.
That's right. So we clean up after the second unit. But on occasion, when the scenes for Team A were bigger, we'd be brought in. There was about 5 or 6 of us. And I was part of that. And I had the privilege of being on set with Keanu Reeves.
I was gonna say.
And Lawrence Fishburne.
Oh shit!
But if you haven't watched The Matrix, it's fantastic. Even to this day, it still holds up. The graphics.
Yeah, no, honestly. But story-wise and everything, the themes of that movie definitely hold up.
Definitely.
So like that's in Australia. Bringing it back to like PNG. So I remember it's like there's this distinct story. The thing that like caught my attention was when you started talking about wanting to produce content in PNG. You mentioned a story about like when a certain TV company was getting set up. Yeah, I'll let you go like give the details if you want. And like you had an opportunity to produce some content featuring Papua New Guinea. So could you go back to that story? Go into that story.
Sure. When TV1, Digicel TV now, when it was first starting out, and I think it was 2013, I believe it was, they started putting out expressions of interest, but within the industry before they put it out on the newspaper, saying that they were looking for people to hire because they were creating a new media company. That's how they worded it back then. I remember the ad. And I caught wind of it, and one of my in-laws who was working at Digicel was like, hey bro, there's an opportunity coming up like this. Would you be interested? And I said, okay, fantastic. Yeah, sure. So I answered the ad. I put in my resume, my CV. I put it in, I sent it in, and I got like a call like a week later. And I spoke straight to...
What did you apply for exactly?
So I applied for the position of producer. They didn't specifically say what it was, because I think everything at that time was still coming into formation, but they just needed people to produce for a TV channel. So when I went in for the interview, I went straight to the Digicel office, and I met up with former boss for news and sports, a gentleman from Tasmania by the name of Tony Fontaine. Tony Fontaine, if anybody knows who he is, he was a really great boss, old school boss. He's from the days, the 70s and 80s when Australian television was really strong before, all the cable stuff started coming from overseas and sort of weekend Australia content creation. And he came in to help organize, to build up a newsroom, which is a 24-hour job, constant for most TV stations, and also to organize sports for getting sports coverage as well, organizing teams of cameramen to go out and producers to go out and capture sport whenever sports are on. So he brought me in for an interview, and I went in, and he said, this is what we have. We have sports and we have news. I said, his name is Tony. So I said, Tony, that's fantastic, but I'm not a sports guy. Even though I played sports when I was younger, I'm actually not interested in producing sports. And news, I don't mind news, but, there's... My passions lie...
You're not where your passion lies.
That's right. So my passion lies elsewhere. So I told him that I want to produce Papua New Guinea content. And I think I've always wanted to produce Papua New Guinea content. I don't remember exactly when I thought about it. Probably when I had finished from film school and came back and I started doing freelance work. So I was actually freelancing before I went to Digicel. That means I was running around doing odd jobs here and there with the camera and very basic editing equipment on a computer. So Tony said, okay, you can come in and you can start off producing news and maybe some sport. And then while you're there, we can look at producing content, local content, Papua New Guinea content. I said, fantastic, great. Signed the dotted line. 3 weeks later, I started out again. And back in those days, Digicel threw a lot of money at TV1, a lot of it. I mean like a lot, like 6 figures. So in terms of the startup, there was like, there was some major stuff happening. Like if anybody remembers Hytron was bought out by TV1 when they first came in. Digicel bought it out for TV1. There was another cable company called Channel 8, and they specialized in the hard lines, whereas Hytron was wireless. So they bought them out as well. They bought out all the competition.
Oh wow! Actually, I wondered what happened to them, but
yeah, they bought them out. Those were 6 figures. I was actually present with my boss at the time, which is the gentleman I mentioned, Tony, when some of the deals were being brokered, and I actually had the privy of being around. Like the Hytron deal went down, and I won't give the exact amount, just out of courtesy, but I will say that was 6 figures. The owners of Hytron were Americans. They'd been here a long time, and they initially didn't want to sell her, but when they saw Digicel, offer, they're like, yeah, all right. And Channel 8 were like, yeah, where do we sign? Yeah, it's all good. So they did. They sold out. That was a lot of money. But I think the biggest expenditure for them at that time was the NRL bid. And that's where it all started, this whole MTV versus TV1. That was back then in 2013, 2014.
What do you mean? Sorry, I'm not.
Okay, so we're going off on a little bit of tangent here, but I'll try and do this as quickly as I can.
Okay.
So, with sports on television or cable TV, it's big money. Big money. I'm talking about millions, even billions too as well, like revenue in terms of advertising spots anywhere in the world. And NRL is no different. NRL, as much as Papua New Guineans love NRL is a money-making business. Each of those teams you see in there, they have budgets, they have promotional plans, they have marketing plans and strategies, and they all have to pay a fee to this organization that owns the NRL brand, all these kind of clubs. So when they come in there and they sign up in that, there's certain ways in which they go about getting themselves, their brand promoted, whether they're successful in the competition or not. So that's all about like making money, right? So for a channel that's outside of Australia to then want to buy in to the opportunity to show the games, to telecast the games on their channels, it costs money, a lot of money. So back in the old days, or what Papua New Guineans were used to with MTV, was the games would just be shown. It's free to air. Papua New Guineans don't have to pay anything. They just make sure that they need TV whenever the game's on. Right. In actual fact, NRL were losing money through Papua New Guinea. They were losing millions and millions and millions of TV.
Losing money?
Because they don't make any money
Off PNG.
Off PNG for showing any of the games. All the money that's made locally from advertising stuff that you would see during like the MTV games always went back to MTV. So MTV is supposed to pay a fee to the NRL, the overall body that owns the NRL, the brand of NRL rugby. And they never paid that. And the reason why they got away with it is because one of the founding members of the NRL, that organization, was Channel 9. Channel 9, if you don't know who Channel 9 is, Channel 9 is one of the biggest channels in Australia. And they're also one of the big sisters or big brothers of MTV. When MTV started, they got a lot of stuff that Channel 9 to start, infrastructure. This is all the way back in the 80s. So there was always this sort of small brother, small sister sort of thing, as is the case with a lot of Australian organizations and a lot of Australian relationships with Papua New Guinea. Well, when Digicel came in, they're like, you know what? Stop. NRL is making a lot of money now. So then they put it in NRL, say, hey, guess what? We're new on the market and we're in a position to pay for it. Immediately NRL was like, hey, MTV, y'all gonna pay anything or what? And at that time, when I was there, because I was right there next to my boss, and he was part of the whole bid process as well, we found out that at that time, I don't know what it's like now, this is all historical now, so if you guys want to comment or check on it, you can do all that. In fact, check all you want, that's fine. But MTV owed, I think, Channel 9 and or the body that owned NRL. They must have owed them like 10 million Aussie dollars or something, somewhere around that. Because I think the understanding was they were supposed to pay like $1 million, around that figure of Kina per year every time NRL was being shown. But they weren't doing it. But Channel 9, some strange relationship in there. They came in there and they covered us in it, and I didn't
even know about that.
Yeah, true. And I mean, I do think Papua New Guineans, we are special people in that, but I think at some point we gotta like pick up the slack, and I think we have to pay our bills, because what happens is that we have, things like the recession that we're gonna be probably going through. That's another issue. But I was of the mind when I was in there that bloody hell, if NRL is gonna be shown in Papua New Guinea, then Papua New Guinea should take some ownership. Because we love rugby so much in that, but we've been doing it at the expense of somebody else, which was MTV and Channel 9.
Okay.
So
now what? Digicel took away.
So NRL was like, okay, well, we've got the bid coming up, what we do with other territories. So whereas Papua New Guinea would sit down quietly behind Channel 9 because of Digicel's presence at that time, Digicel TV, TV1, they were able to then step up and say, okay, Papua New Guinea, you're being recognized now, you're part of the conversation again. What can you offer? Because it's a bid, you have to bid for the rights. When the rights come up, you're informed in writing, or they even put it out like a little video or something that is used internally. You won't see this stuff on YouTube or TikTok or anything. It's all internal use. It's for these big companies. And say, hey, guess what? The 2014 NRL bid is out. What do you reckon? This year we're doing this and this and this and that. And hey, you have an opportunity to submit your bids for this territory. By all means, go ahead. Contact this person, blah, blah, blah.
So what that means is one specific channel will be the official broadcaster for a certain region. That's right. So I don't know what happened. What's the conclusion of the story?
Sorry, I'll try and make this short. So basically, NRL got a bid from Digicel, and I'll say it was in the tens of six figures, more than 10 million bid was submitted to NRL, which they won, which led to MTV not being able to telecast the first games, they could telecast the replays, but they couldn't telecast the live game. That all went to TV1.
TV.
Because TV1 played the game how it's supposed to be played, and that's that when an international sport is telecast anywhere else in the world in different territories, it has to be paid for. Because that's how NRL makes money, and that's how they're able to pay for the broadcast, and that's how they're able to give bonuses to those clubs as well. And the clubs do make money from that as well. So I was part of that and privy to that as well. That was great and fantastic and everything, but that's not what I wanted to do. Because as much as I appreciate everybody liking rugby, I don't give a damn about rugby.
Me too, I'm not
if I'm offending anyone, I don't care.
Me neither. I don't watch sports then.
If anything, I'm more aligned to rugby union, but that's another discussion.
Okay.
So at the same time this was happening as well, I could clearly see that there was a lot of money being thrown on the register. So I was thinking to myself, going back to originally what I said about being hired was, oh gosh, they probably have enough money to seriously look at producing local Papua New Guinea content. And when I'm saying content, I'm referring to like TV drama, comedy series, game shows, even local like legend storytelling and putting it into like a serialized format where every week we have a different story from a different region of Papua New Guinea that's been acted out and it's been scripted in language and all that. So really unique content, unique to Papua New Guineans and the way we see
relevant to us, made by us.
Exactly, because I was always of the opinion that we consume Papua New Guineans, even right now, even back in the day, before even some of you were born all the way in the 80s, 90s, we've always watched overseas content. Hours and hours, thousands of hours. Most kids today, you can recite most lines from most movies, you know everything about the MCU, you know everything about everything else, pop. Social culture is just,
anime.
It's prevalent, right? And that's through the different streams that come through. So it only seems right that we should have our own Papua New Guinea content. I mean, we're Papua New Guinea music, right? We're missing some opportunities there. But the point is, it's ours. We can mess it up. We can do whatever we want to do. But we don't have that across the board in terms of the arts, in terms of
movies, TV series,
and that's what I told. That's what I was telling you when we originally had our first conversation. Was that Digicel? They do want to. I know they want to produce local content, and I'm trying to also produce content as well. Which hopefully, Digicel, if you guys see this, well, maybe we can, work on some stuff. But at the time that I was there, under the management system that was there, which was the TV1, it was very difficult. So I would write proposals upon proposals upon proposals. I would spend sleepless nights putting together proposals with full budget costs, schedules. I would go and liaise with certain people from certain magazines, female magazines. I won't mention any names because it's history now, ancient history. Were very eager to produce talk shows with us as well. And it was going really well. We had preliminary talks and all that stuff fell through for whatever reasons. And a lot of it had to do with the lack of confidence because it's easier to make money off
selling other people.
Selling other people's efforts than it is to sit down and want to produce something ourselves. And a lot of that has to do with many different factors, one of which is the main corporate body, the TV channel, or whoever owns that. Are they willing to put up the money, the time, the resources? Are they willing to more or less bankroll and also put trust, because the trust has to be there for the bankroll. So, and that's like an intellectual argument or conversation to have. You'd have to pick the brain of the person in charge or the people who are sitting on the board in terms of why they would not want to pursue that or pursue that. There's also the government aspect as well. We have no real infrastructure. You have essentially what's like a gig type of a situation where you have people going off. Occasionally they get funding and they want to go and film something, maybe for an NGO, or they want to do it for themselves or some partners that they've managed to convince that they want to produce, maybe a fictional production. But then there's no tangible way to have the product that's made from that be viewable in a way that's money making enough to justify the expenditure. Like if somebody's going to spend 50,000 kina on producing a short movie here, how do they make that money back? So there's a lot of technicality and there's a lot of
it's like you need a pipeline, a working pipeline to go from producing the content to making the money, and that doesn't exist.
That's essentially what the infrastructure should be, and the government should be representing us. So right now we have National Cultural Commission, NCC, stepping up, and the boss man over there, Mr. Stephen Kilanda, fantastic guy, awesome guy, but we have an issue where we still have decrepit internal public service methodologies that don't work. I'm making it sound fancy, but it doesn't work. It's so stagnant because you can have 3 or 4 producers that have the potential to create really cool stuff, approaching organizations like not just NCC, but other organizations that might be able to give grants as well. I'm talking about like government, pseudo-government, such as the petroleum mining sector. There's people there who are willing to, organizations there that can give money for these sort of things. But it just doesn't happen as frequently as it should. Because with frequency comes demand, comes interest, comes an audience, and that's the basis of the receiving end of what an infrastructure is supposed to cater for, because infrastructure in terms of what we're talking about is basically supply and demand. And the form, the machine that you start from one end, you put the raw product in, and then you produce it for the people.
I feel like the system just needs like a kickstart. Like someone needs to go ahead, produce some stuff, and then people are interested in, like, if they like it, they'll want more. Yeah. And then people can be like, hey, look, see, my first project made this much money. If you guys give me another, opportunity, I might be able to make more. And then,
absolutely.
But yeah, that's not enough.
People, it's not enough. So how it should work is like this. So this is what they say in business. A private business, a public, I'll say the public business dictates government policy. So if all the businesses are, lining up behind projects to want to sponsor this TV series or this TV show or this documentary or this cultural sort of program, then the government's going to be like, oh, so that's where the interest is. This is what the people want to do. So they're going to be like, okay, we're going to allocate some money from the budget to produce more of this and that, which NCC have done. I saw the new budget that they put together last year for this year, and it's really good. Now, as to whether the government has money or not to be able to realize all those projects, that's another podcast altogether. But the point is, like, there's some kind of a silver lining around the cloud, to put it in kind of a loose way, that some of this stuff is possible. But at the end of the day, it's like, for it to work, we need government buy-in, which requires, like you said, people to produce. So it's like a leap of faith. Now, I know a lot of good guys, really salt of the earth guys, who, when they get a bit of money, they go out and they go straight to Theodist, or they go to some other place. They even go online to eBay and stuff, and they buy really nice equipment, nice cameras, the latest Sonys, A7s, or whatever the latest versions are, and then they go and buy expensive MacBooks from like Daytech or from some other outlet for like 30,000. They'll go and buy a drone. Drone is a popular one. But like, you're all my mates and everything. We all work in this industry, but I don't see enough content from any of you. Like, I don't know what you guys are doing. Why are you guys buying all this equipment and making Theodist rich and all these other people rich? And you're not producing enough. It boggles my mind as to why they do that. It's like they buy this equipment. This is how I imagine it. From a freelance point, they buy the equipment, they sit down, and they try to get contracts, or they try to see a one-top or a Salomon organization, and they either get the job or they don't get the job. That's not the issue whether they get the job or not. The issue is that because most of them don't have a formal understanding of what it is they're trying to achieve with the equipment they have, they just don't put it out there. And that's another thing as well. Like, for places like Theodist and other places to sell this equipment, like the DJI equipment and like the Canons and the Sonys and that, well, there has to be a demand. So there's obviously a demand because people are buying them because they just keep bringing them in. Here is the content. I'm on almost every social platform that Papua New Guinea is on. Like Instagram, that's all phone. That's like 99% of people using their phones. Honestly, from a Papua New Guinea context, I mean. And something with YouTube, I don't see much. Like, I'll see a couple of drone shots come out every year, and it's just people shooting stuff. But there's not enough. That's true. Like I know, like several people who have like really good phones and stuff like that. And some of them do produce content. And like for me, personally, I just want to make something. I'm someone who I feel like I have a lot to talk about, a lot to say, a lot of different things that I want to put out there. So I like having these kind of conversations like that with people, and so that's why I made my channel, because I wanted to produce like the purpose of me making this channel was to put content out there. So I have my limitations. I don't have the best phone equipment or anything like that, but it's just that like what I have, I'm just gonna put it up there. Like you guys can't see the setup that I have right now, but I'm basically just putting my phone on a bucket, and then I'm using this gym equipment to hold up my phone, and then we're recording it with it. But it's like, yeah, I like it. I like it. Yeah, I like it. It's good. I feel like you just kind of have to take a leap of faith. Absolutely. And put yourself out there and then like make stuff, and then eventually, once you create a stream or a pipeline of things, then things will come down the line. Like there'll be a long drought, but then eventually you'll start seeing benefits from it. For me personally, I haven't necessarily. I've got up to like 200 subscribers now, but like it's at least at the time of this recording. But like it took me a while to get here, and there's still a long way. I'm nowhere near enough to be monetized. It's just a matter of consistency and putting stuff out there and keep doing it, and then eventually things will come. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you just said it. It's this is the nature of the business, whether it's podcasting or just people going like IG models or whatever. Like it's consistency. As long as you're consistent and you keep yourself out there, it follows essentially like the principles of advertising, which is you have to stay relevant.
Stay
Relevant. You gotta like stay out there. You gotta put out there. This is why we look at Coke pumping billions of dollars everywhere in the world. And you know, with the recent Pepsi versus Coke wars they had last year, the second of last year. I mean, Coke, they shit themselves a bit. I don't know. Pepsi, well, you know, Pepsi put all the statements out there like, oh, you know, this percentage of people prefer Pepsi. You know, and Coke were like, well, that might not be true, but like, how do we refute it without looking like, you know, bitches? You know, so they can. If you guys didn't notice, if you're not in the main centers in Papua New Guinea, you would have noticed if you're in the cities or towns that Coke made a real effort to try to put some promotional stuff around. But that costs money as well.
I think I did see that ad where Pepsi was saying something like this number of people preferring Pepsi. I remember that. And I was like, this sounds like bullshit, but it's kind of ballsy.
Yeah, I mean, Pepsi is, I would say Pepsi is pretty much out there. I think it's actually taken...
Do you like Coke or Pepsi, actually?
I like them both, to be honest. I probably shouldn't drink them, considering like...
I'm trying to stop soft drinks lately, but I think if I had to pick up one, I'd probably pick up Pepsi, actually.
Pepsi's more pleasant.
Yeah, pleasant.
Going back to what you said, like, it's about consistency, right? So, like myself, I have projects that I want to work on as well, that I'm working on currently right now. But it's one of those things where it's like I was mentioning, like trying to do a TV series or a TV show or something. It just has to be done, like you said. You have to do it. Because if you wait, it just won't happen. You have to take a leap of faith. But I will say this though. One thing the Papua New Guineans are very good at doing, but it's not a really good thing of doing, is copying each other. Or rather emulating. I mean, it is what it is, human nature and that, but at the same time, it's like, you know, if you're going to fish in the same hole as the guy next to you, you're not going to catch anything. You know what I mean? It's not fish there. It's not fish there. It's an amazing parable there. Yeah. So you got to really try to rethink. It's like, the Papua New Guineans, I love Papua New Guineans. But it's like the philosophy, it's like the approach of three people who live in the same, like the houses all next door to each other, have boy market all next door to each other. Okay? We don't see anything wrong with that. But if a analyst was going to come in, they'd be like, this is interesting. So they sell the same thing, all these three markets, right? Yes? Okay, so wait, what's your price? 1 kilo for boy. What's your price? What's your price? Okay. So from a purely economic point of view, what is smart about the situation? Wouldn't it be better if you guys came up with a scenario where, hey, how about two of you guys pull all the beetle nut together and let one person sell it, and then you guys can split the shares, and you guys can go off and do something else with your time. But you see, that sort of thinking, some people do that, but most Papuans won't do that because are finding work, but not in a bad way. We have to fill our time with doing things. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but okay, now I'm going to flip this now. So imagine if all those people had jobs in like a film industry or television industry, whether they're cleaners or maybe they come and sell beetle nut, you know, in between takes and stuff when people are shooting that, coming on to do catering and stuff like that. Like that's like a lot more better use of their time. And I'm using the beetle nut analogy because I'm trying to address the Papua New Guinean work ethic, which is most Papua New Guineans don't lay down and die. You know what I mean? They don't stop. They just keep going, whatever it is. You know, they just get up and keep moving. Only the privileged, you know, ones tend to sort of just
relax a bit,
move around in house styles or beg a bit, relax. But for the most part, Papua New Guineans can work. So, you know, we have this work ethic. So, television and film industry should work here. Because it's a labor-intensive industry where you don't have to have a degree to do it. Anybody can come and learn a specific skill, or they already bring a skill set, which is like cooking and cleaning, and then, you know, even setting up lighting as well, you know, for a film shoot or something. That's really basic. All you got to do is just what the director of photography or the director of the entire shoot tells you to do. So there's like it's like a no-brainer. It can be done. What's missing, like I said before, addressed it, is we need to have more productions either produced by independent people. We need to have the government put up more money, and even have like a separate authority, like a film commission or a film board.
We don't have one of those.
So we've got something up in Gorka, the NFI, the National Film Institute, and they're a great bunch of guys up there. Michelle, she's the boss up there. She's great in that. My personal opinion is that they have a part to play in the infrastructure part, but I think they're more of an academic
teaching. Right.
Teaching. They're more about teaching and storage. They archive a lot of the old footage that was done on like celluloid film, which is old film reels. You probably see them in those old school movies. No? They have them up there. They keep them up there because it's colder. Climate is colder, so it's easier for them to store that stuff because celluloid is quite brittle and it can just fade and like the heat and too much moisture, humidity. So it's cheaper and cooler to keep it up there as well because you don't have to run air cons or whatever. But they're not in a position to really do
actively
funding.
produce stuff.
No, they don't have a say on the money. Then they're funded by the NCC. National Cultural Commission's budget funds NFI as well. Now they're trying to change the structure. They're trying to make it more commercial, meaning that they want to be able to charge fees. They want to be able to have more formality with like advertising places around the country for filming locations for the international markets to come and film here rather than just going to South America or going to Hawaii or going to Fiji. They can come in from Papua New Guinea. But it's something that people have talked about for many years, but it's very difficult to do because you have people who actually don't know what they're doing, or they're hired to do something and they don't do it because they fall into the ebb and flow of Melanesian life, which unfortunately, stagnation is a way of life. It's not something to be, fight against stagnation, but it's something where you sort of.
I mean, if you're prosperity sometimes, like we have our own version of prosperity. The first episode that me and Anna did, the One Talk System and PNG Time, the origin of PNG Time. So that kind of fits in there. That mentality of the PNG time kind of prevails, not just when it comes to time management, but even just like general stagnation.
Yeah, I've experienced that in the few shoots that I've been involved in, where people kind of like that. But surprisingly speaking, I mean, in the same breath as well, I will say that Papua New Guineans, the ones who want to be in this industry, it's like the actors and producers, and not producers necessarily, but the technical crew, they do make an effort to turn up on time, or even before time, especially for something new and invigorating and like, even visceral in terms of like being able to effectively create stuff. Because if you think about it, guys, like the film and the television industry, essentially you're taking an idea that isn't even real. Somebody writes it down on paper, structures it in a way that's been done elsewhere in the world to be put on in front of a camera and shot with sound in a certain way, and then cut up and paste it together to make this cohesive visual document with sound, video, and sound effects and music to essentially provoke a response from you that makes you either feel good, feel bad, or reflect on something, and essentially have some kind of a response, an artistically inclined response, or like any kind of response. And that in itself it's a real human thing. And I don't know why the idea of something like that, which touches almost every single person that's able to see that, why that's not a paramount initiative for this government and governments before to want to pursue in terms of funding that. Because if you're talking about Papua New Guineans having an attitude problem, well, that's how you adjust an attitude. If you are able to screen community-minded, positive messaged, solution-providing content disguised in a really entertaining format, like a family TV show, for instance,
which shows someone with a bad attitude and something,
that people can look at it and be like, oh, hang on, that person looks just like my uncle. Wait a minute, that person looks just like my mother, my father. Hey, look at me right there.
Hey, I do that.
And then you give them solutions within those stories, those story arcs, which are the structure of how most television series or movies play out. You can actually help your community. You can actually benefit your society.
I mean, you can inspire people. So there's this story that I came up, like it's a true story. So MIT, the famous school in United States that produces like the best engineering students in the US and one of the best technical schools in the world. So they once did a survey and they asked students to write down the name of like who is the most influential like person that got you to come and study MIT. And a name was given. The name that was given, you'd think that they would write the name of like Albert Einstein or some like, I don't know, some other famous engineer throughout history. But actually, they put the most famous one, I can't remember which character it was, but it was a character from Star Trek.
Oh, okay.
A fictional character from Star Trek inspired more than half of the students at MIT. So more than half of the people there, they weren't inspired by real people. They were inspired by a TV show to become real-world engineers. A fictional character inspired them to become real-world engineers at the top engineering school in basically the world. I mean, at least at that time, it was the best engineering school in the world.
Yeah.
And more than half of those students, again, inspired by a fictional character. So you can actually inspire real change in people.
Absolutely.
If you like show them something positive.
Absolutely. It's social engineering.
It's.
I mean, as much as
a positive social engineering.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, as much as like,
but it can be negative too.
True. I was about to say that negative. You look at like the idea of propaganda. Okay, so if you're not familiar with propaganda, you look at World War II. If any of you are familiar with World War II or not, I advise you to go on the internet, go on YouTube, and look it up. But so Germany, the Nazis, right? They used the visual medium at the time, mind you, this is like old school film, old school
black
film,
and white.
black and white, like very basic audio. But they use that in terms of putting together images of Adolf Hitler and the whole like Nazi Third Reich, the army. In the early days, they put all together to muster up the strength and the mindsets of Germans at the
Inspire
time.
people, nationalism.
Almost like a communistic approach, even, which
They're completely different, but
it's different, but it's similar as well at the same time.
It's propaganda.
It's propaganda. So the visual medium is so powerful. People don't even like realize sometimes the way you dress, the way you look at yourself, how you consume things, how you drink, everything. Just stop after you guys finish this podcast. I'm serious. Just look all around you. Think of how much of the stuff you have around you, or you put in you, or you have, or you watch, or you have on your phone. Even your phone itself. How much of that has been inspired by some form of promotion, of advertising? And then try and think of how that thing that's not produced here, because 99% of everything you see around you, apart from maybe a Bilum and other articles that are locally made, are brought in from overseas. And they don't just make these things for Papua New Guinea market. Our market is too small. Only a few people get rich here. They mass produce this stuff for the world. And all of this is done with the purpose of getting money from you. No matter where you are in the world, somebody's going to get money out of you. So you imagine taking that basic marketing strategy and applying it to something like putting out propaganda, which is where you want to show, you don't want people to buy food or clothes from you, but you want people to buy a social mindset, an attitude, a behavior, a response. So you just bombard them with it, which is what the Germans did. They're not Germans, I shouldn't say Germans,
Nazis.
What the Nazis did in Germany was many years ago. And it turned out the way it did. They massacred so many
and
people.
they convinced so many of their own citizens to follow along with their stuff because of their propaganda.
So that's the negative aspect of it. But you imagine utilizing that, which is what a lot of these marketing campaigns today do overseas.
You can help solve like PNG time with stuff like that by showing.
Absolutely. I'll give you an example. If we had, from the beginning, from independence, if we had a proper policy that was put in place by the government in the day, at the time, to address social attitudes, or the adjustment of social attitudes coming from a grassroots background, which most everybody was coming out of independence, mid to late 70s, coming into the new world with the rest of the world, globalization, but allowing people to transition by utilizing mass communication, media communication like radio and television, allowing a smoother ride for not just the older generation, but especially younger generation, my generation coming, to be able to fit into that one spectrum of information being produced by, say, the government saying, okay, we're going to have a media office that are going to produce small, maybe 15-minute videos telling people this is how they should, behave when they're in public, or when we have expatriates come in now who are not ruling over us anymore, like the old administration, Australian administration was when we were a colonial country, that this is how they should be received now, and just stuff like that. And you play it all the time, continuously just play it in rotation. How that can adjust, maybe not necessarily the minds of the older people, but definitely the younger people, the kids. You show them that stuff, and they're already adjusted in their mind. Like, oh, white man come, this is how the government is. Oh, who was our first prime minister? Blah blah blah. Who was the deputy opposition leader back in 1983? So all this stuff becomes like just common knowledge. And this is what China does. This is what Korea does. This is what Japan does. Australia not so much, but they're overly liberal anyway. So these are these sort of social. This is like it's a normal policy. It's like what they do. It's
educational thing too. Yeah, in a way. Like I wouldn't say, like, even if you're not producing it for TV, there should be someone out there, like the education department who can help step in and like I know they produce stuff on TV where they show like in the classrooms, right?
Don't get me started on that.
But then,
I've worked on that as well.
Yeah, but then like what I'm saying is, rather than just do that, do like an actual showcase of like who the prime ministers were, or a story about independence, right? And then have that be like a yearly thing that's played every year or something like that.
Absolutely.
Or produce it as like a CDs that can be bought, or maybe put it on YouTube. So, and have it like so kids can, or like a history teacher can just tell his students to go and watch this video.
Or I can give you another fun way to do it, and this is how they do it in other places. You have kids game shows. And you have kids basically, so they had, I think Big Rooster did Think Tank a couple of years back.
Yeah.
And that was a really great format in that, but I believe they didn't formalize it as much as they could have done that. There were some really good ideas, and I participated in one or two of those shoots, and I mean they had a good format in that, but there's just that longevity, the idea of like focusing on creating a real platform and having it grow from what I could tell when I was involved in it briefly, it wasn't there.
It was just meant to be like a temporary thing.
It was Blue Rooster basically pushing the product with the kids by sponsoring a show. It was good. Like,
yeah,
that's how they do it.
I mean, actually, that's a good thing. Yeah, man, like somebody should like pick that up, but then make it more like a permanent thing and keep going. Because that's basically what you were talking about earlier when you said you wanted to produce, and that's actually a good way to like, yeah, like it'll be interesting for kids. It'll be educational for them, and at the same time, it's like it's PNG content. Yeah. And then maybe from that can be like a platform by which like some of these producers can be like, oh, why don't we do something that adults can enjoy now?
Absolutely.
And go from there.
I will say one thing, and you touched upon this as well in terms of like what's wrong with our industry as well, or the lack of industry. It's also Melanesianism. And when I mention that, I'm talking about some of our preconceived notions that we have, that we're kind of taught. And I do believe that Papua New Guinea tend to get in the way of ourselves, and then we end up getting in the way of everyone else. And I think sometimes we don't know when to step aside and allow somebody else to come in. And when I'm saying that, it's also touching upon, like, my friends I told you about who buy a lot of expensive equipment. Nobody wants to share information. Nobody wants to share equipment. I mean, if they do share equipment, there's always like some resentment or something pops up at the end of the day or something. And this could be isolated.
Collaboration. There's not enough collaboration between.
Yeah, I mean, there's always an issue that comes up, and this is from my experience. Like I said, this could be isolated, but I'm pretty sure that people in other sort of similar related industries might have this, or have experienced or heard about this. But you'll have situations where people will collaborate for a while, and then for some reason they don't collaborate anymore. And that can be with a whole number of different reasons, right? So this kind of personalized type of pursuit of trying to do something like within this industry gets in the way of the notion of what should actually be done. Like I put it, like not everybody gets along with each other. You might have there might be people who might not want to work with me because I've worked with them in the past. Maybe they didn't like my opinions or how I did stuff. Maybe they just didn't like how I looked, or they didn't like where I was from ethnically in PNG, which I won't say because I'm not Papua. But those sort of things kill an industry. And at some point, it's like you got to look at what are you trying to achieve? We all have a limited time on Earth. And what do you want to do with that time? I'm not going to like house line. We're just going to be, trying to impress our other cousins and uncles. Or do you actually want to help like society? You want to help your neighbors? And you want to help people around you? And when you see somebody on the road, a kid on the road selling brooms or something because she has no other way to help her dad, like raise money and to buy food, and that, I mean, is that an isolated thing, or is there something you can do to help? And there is something we can all do to help. It's like, and this goes into just the PNG experience in general, which is buy more PNG stuff, try to eat less imported food and try to eat more like garden food. Try to buy more Papua New Guinea, produce like beef and chicken and stuff. I think they stopped importing chicken in the last couple of years.
I'm not sure about that.
Like that. But the whole idea is like Papua New Guineanism, in a good way, as opposed to Melanesianism. So the reason why I'm using those two terms is because men, Papua New Guinean men especially, I think Melanesian men, it's not just Papua New Guinea, it's like from the region as well. We have a habit of like seeing our neighbor have something better than us, and then we'll be like, oh, okay. Yeah, and then our minds will be, it's like, we sort of hate.
Yeah, I know, there's hate. Okay, that's right.
And it's kind of like where I appreciate most Papua New Guinea.
I can see how, so it's particularly in the arts industry, like producing content and stuff like that, yeah, that's like, I mean, I've never necessarily had that opinion, but I'm definitely around people where sometimes like something good will happen to somebody right there, and then like you'll just see, even if it's like a complete stranger, like a guy will drive by on his car and then just someone will just, that exact statement that you said is like, and they did nothing to them. All they did was drive by in their car.
I mean, the same would apply for like singers, for instance. Right? Somebody popular might release a song, and then some kids might hear it, and whether they like it or don't like it or whatever, the sentiment seems to be the same. Fair enough. Some of the songs maybe should be of different subjects, but I mean, if it's a well-produced song, I mean, it's Papua New Guinea, right? You should kind of like try to support it and stuff like that. But what's the end game?
I think I can sort of see that. Yeah, your point about like one of the big things that is like slowing down Malaysian content is kind of just like the attitude that we have towards it. That's something that I don't think I ever really considered actually. I kind of saw what you were saying earlier, so kind of coming back and like going over it, you were saying that like the government on the one hand too doesn't like do enough, but I feel like, so for me personally, what I understand what the government is like a reactive body. So it's the other issue that you said about people not producing enough. I think if more people produce enough stuff and a demand was created, then the government will step in. And then you have those two problems taken care of. But then, other than those two problems, another one that you just brought up was the one about like attitude. just a cult, like that's a cultural one though. That as like individuals, it's not like I'm not necessarily someone who's even in the arts. I'm more like a tech guy who's kind of cutting into this field. Like I'm not like you came at this from like the arts, right?
Yep.
And me personally, I am not interested in. I mean, I like movies and stuff, but like my passion is more with like computing and stuff like that. But I circled into YouTube because that's like it's sort of linked.
Yeah.
But it's this linking between, and I can say that as someone who's not coming from the outside, that definitely people outside of the arts have that perspective or that attitude, and I can see how it would just kill the industry before it even really starts.
Right. And it's been doing that. That's one of the reasons why it's killed it. It's because people don't want to work together. I mean, the amount of times I've reached out to people that I've worked with, that I've helped facilitate jobs for, and I'd say, hey bro, lend me a camera. I'll go and do this job, and I'll get some coin back. And they'll make up excuses as to why, camera back, don't know something about. It'd be nice to like say like, bro, I don't want to give you a camera because I'm worried it might be damaged, bro. I prefer a deposit, and just stuff like that. Just business is business. Personal is personal. Like, I mean, I won't take it personally. Just tell me if you don't want me to use equipment. That's fine. Just tell me. But at the same time, you should feel free to come and ask me for something. And don't assume just because I said no, you said no to me, that I'm going to say no to you. Because that's not how it works. It's like we're trying to build something. It's bigger than you and me. Let's see what we can do. Or somebody I might have worked with on a previous project, we might have some issues or there's some misunderstandings that we messed up. Usually mine. And then, I mean, that shouldn't stop us from working together.
Again,
it's
maybe the
like,
second time around you fix things up.
Like, nature is a funny way of doing things. Like sometimes you might be trying to avoid someone and then you forget about them and you happen to bump into them again. Say, hey bro, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
So what happened to things? But in reality, it's like, I didn't even get you. Because you didn't call me back. So that kind of pettiness, I mean, it's funny for doing anecdotal stories like this. But the reality is like, we should all keep an open mind. We should all keep it fresh, the perspective fresh. And at the same time, like what you're just mentioning, and I better, this is not necessarily a Melanesianism, but this is to do with people in general. The older guys don't necessarily want to give an easy pass to the younger guys. Because they, for whatever reason, they haven't heard it.
They have it hard and they don't want to make it easier for me.
Exactly.
I suffered, so you must suffer too.
And I get it, that's like the rite of passage, but at the same time, it does hurt the industry as well. Because if you got young guys coming up who are really talented, that should be nurtured. And countless times I've approached young guys who I see with really good equipment, and I'm not necessarily trying to tell them what to do because I would never do that. But I'm trying to give them some insights into stuff, and then I always try to read it that if they don't respond to me by asking me a question, like after I've maybe mentioned something to them after the first 2 times about how they're shooting, where they're shooting, then I know that this person is either still learning or they're not serious about the craft. They're just filling in the time. Maybe they're using equipment that they told daddy to buy, or maybe they did some side deals and they got to a point and they came upon some equipment. So it's tricky as well. And this is one of the reasons why having these formal avenues, these formal organizations, like having an association that can, like a film association, for instance, or like a Papua New Guinean Filmmakers Association, where people can join up and then come up with their own rules and their own standards of practice that they can then take to another organization like the Film Board, like I was mentioning, and then come up with government policy, and it's just recognized. And like you said, people coming out of the woodwork, producing left, right, center, they're putting stuff on YouTube, they're putting stuff in the streaming stuff on the networks. And doing that, then the government reacts and they're like, wait, hang on, we've got all this PNG content and stuff. Because you look at rugby.
Yeah.
As soon as leading up to the World Cup, they go hunting around for all of those young, not even mouse grass pull up or what, they were already hunting for them in those little junior clubs in Queensland, in New South Wales and stuff, to put them in the Kumu, so they'll go and win. Like, why can't they do the same for like the arts? It's like, hey, we can make a fantastic film industry. Who's come to Papua New Guinea? Who's an interest in making a film in Papua New Guinea? We should be exploring that. We should have like a film office with whoever represents Papua New Guinea tourism in like Los Angeles.
There's so many like times when I hear that a movie is going to be made in PNG, but it just doesn't pan out. So many times, and I feel like if there was a formal government institution that it would help facilitate that, right? So if they did come across some sort of issue that like was preventing them from coming, then they have helped local people who can help them like facilitate that. Like they said like Survivor was supposed to be here, and then there was this like BT movie a few years back. And I think recently there was supposed to be another one. And then things just keep. But that's that's one thing. I mean, I guess I always kind of knew it, but I guess now you're confirming it that we don't have a formal government, or maybe not necessarily government, but like a body in this country. It doesn't necessarily have to be government, but an official body that deals with
True.
Bringing in film crews here.
One body, yeah. So when a film crew wants to come in here right now, they're advised usually they'll reach out to the tourism sector, body, which is TPA, Tourism Promotion Authority. Fantastic bunch of guys. But TPA unfortunately are limited because they're not like they're not like a ministry or something. They're like a pseudo government organization as well. So in terms of helping wannabe filmmakers coming, they approach it from the like as if tourists coming in, they want to spend money or spend a lot more time in. So then they have to still refer, because if you're a foreign film crew, you still have to get permits in process. You have to apply for and you have to pay for bringing in equipment, all that stuff. So that process, TPA give information, but they can't actually handle that. That is delegated back to NFI, which are based in Gorka.
That's right.
So for somebody to physically
and they're
come
not a
from
commercial
overseas, like they're an academic organization as well. I mean, they've done good work and they've beefed up their facilities up there. And it's really fantastic what Michelle is doing up there. But I think that there should be more emphasis placed on having this really sort of a really shiny, really specialized, like almost like a glamorous approach, right from a website to like an office, almost like a franchise-looking thing where you wow the people from overseas. Like when they go and they type in, "Oh, I'm filming in Papua New Guinea," this webpage pops up. Wow, going there, it's like, "Oh, these are rates. This is the fantastic. Go to the mighty Sipik and you can film here and there, or head over to the islands."
That sounds like a great idea.
And these places, there are so many, because I've worked in the tourism sector as well, with a lot of clients as well. I know a lot of these people, they have fantastic products. When I mean products in terms of tourism, I'm talking about like motels, hotels, house winds, resorts, beach resorts, and these are locally owned and locally managed. And there's so much possibility to have multiple series and multiple things be filmed out there. But because of the lack of cohesive participation, and I think I should make this clear as well, is there's not an over-governing policy that touches upon all these elements of, so right from the tourism to these leading up to professional people, and even in terms of like hotels and stuff. Because when people go and film in other parts of the world, if they're going to bring in like $1 million or even $2 million or $5 million, $6 million, the government will be like, "Oh, this is fantastic. You guys are going to be here for a few months. You're going to be creating jobs. You're going to need people in specific fields. We have people who can cater that, but we want to make it attractive for you, so we'll give you an incentive by not charging you the usual tax that we charge. And maybe we'll incentivize your operations being here for the next how many months you're filming. And guess what? All the transport is on the PNG government. We'll take care of the transport. Or we'll pay half of your hotel bills. And you incentivize that. And by having these organizations coming in, even though they're not paying the full maybe $5 million, and maybe they're going to save some money because the government has stepped in, what it means is that they're going to bring the next 2 or 3 productions back. And there'll be more money flowing, and then the industry will be kickstarted as well.
And they're basically tourists too. They might buy souvenirs and stuff like that. So
there's so many facets, like so many different people. Like I said, you don't need a degree to really make the industry work for you. You imagine if you had like Survivor happening on one of these islands, like out of caving or something like that. Yeah. These guys are going to need food produced and brought and given every single day. Right? So they can blow up their budget and they can get some private, catering firm, probably one of the ones that does one of these mining or petroleum sites. Or you can get like locals. You can contract with people locally and local people who can get the food, and they just need a bit of. These people work with the government appointed officials coming from the relevant authority, like a film commission or film board. The officer will be like, "Hey, Mama, Papa, I like baik supply, Mr. Trimuna, baik supply, Mr. Kaya, low line, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, number, baik fresh kaya, baik fish, baik orim, kaya, mosquito, kaya, lay, or whatever to the island." Then they can help them, facilitate that. They put them in contact with the suppliers, they bring it, and then as bless say, they're getting paid straight. Yeah. So they're just worried about preparing the food, making sure it's up to standard, all the actors are taken care of. And these are the ways you build industry. And that all that takes is like just people just caring enough to like be committed to be consistent.
Put it out there and be consistent with putting it out there.
Be consistent. And when a phone call comes, that phone call has to be ringing. So many times I've called a lot of these, government organizations, and there's nobody picking up, or it just rings off, or it's not signed. The number you are calling is that it's on the website, and this website was just launched like a month ago, and the number doesn't even work. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And just the effort for that. And I've seen amazing stuff happening have achieved, and this is the irony as well. The double-edged sword is like you look at something like when APEC came in, or even the LNG process of the first half of building up the LNG, which was in the early to mid 2000s. There was so much feedback. There were so many different options and so many more varieties of things you could get in those days because of the sheer volume of people coming to the country. The amount of foreign currency that was coming in. When APEC happened, the 4 to 5 months leading up to APEC, there were all these smaller meetings happening. So there was like media here. There was like, my goodness, and I was involved in that as well. I could not believe the amount of foreign media people that were here. The stadium over at the leisure center over at Taramaya, the old basketball, all those basketball courts and netball courts, it was just media people just sitting there. They had all the little tables, and they're hooking up to this big network. There's a big dish, and they're just sending back all the information and footage relevant to their leaders or the representation of their countries of concern, where they're from, back to their native homelands. That's all they were doing for those couple of months. And these people have to sleep somewhere, they have to eat something, they have to be transported, and all this stuff was being managed by APEC and then some other management companies that were also engaged by APEC. There was so much money that went through for that, the infrastructure for just that. And that was like, the lead up to that was like months and months of planning and preparation. Just for like what, 3 weeks of like APEC? And they brought in those huge ships as well. That people were complaining about it cost so much and that. Well, it did cost a lot of money as well. It cost the PNG government a lot of money as well. But the idea was to generate interest for foreigners to come in. And just seeing the sheer amount of investment, the sheer amount of buy-in, and the sheer amount of just this attitude of people just coming into the country, just like it's anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
Standing outside the hotel smoking. Yeah, I'm going to go back to Wagani? Yeah, I'm going to have to
Wagani.
I think I'm going to walk if I can experience it. Bro, don't walk. Don't worry, I'll organize car for you. How much going to cost? $20? Yeah, okay. So you see all these little, like, intricate little, like, microtransactions happening around. It's like, oh my God, there's money directly going to people's pockets. This is so cool. This is so cool. You just feel part of a greater global community. And just the idea of that in terms of, like, being able to have infrastructure, specifically through film and television, global audience as well, in terms of the audience that might be more of a certain look that comes from a specific place, means that if Papua New Guinea is in that role of having a certain location or locations be viable, I mean, they make money. Money comes straight in. So, like I said initially when we started the podcast, like policy, private sector dictates government policy. So you're right what you said about that. If you build it.
So right now, what's your you work with like F Studios? That's the studio that you work with.
Yes.
Kind of want to sort of wind down by talking about like where you're at right now and some of the stuff that you're doing right now.
In terms of my most recent projects, I worked on a short film with a Russian director who came in. This was right before COVID, at least 6 months before COVID hit, on a script that he had written while he was here. He was actually a contractor for one of the brewery companies. I don't say which specifically, but he was I didn't realize it until we finished the project. He was like a beer professor. He was a chemist.
Oh,
with alcohol. Young guy too. He's pretty Russian guy. Okay. Very down to earth. Awesome. But on the side, he would be a filmmaker.
Oh, okay.
So he managed to come and find us at the Mosby Arts Theater. That's where it's all happening. And he's like, "Hey, bro, I heard you do film. Do you want to help me produce my show?" I'm like, "Yeah, maybe. I don't know. What are you trying to do?" Because I was a bit, I'm weary of, expatriates sometimes trying to come to do stuff here, because sometimes it's like, what's the purpose of this? But he had a genuine story he wanted to tell, and it was pretty good effort, considering he'd only been in the country for maybe 2 years, but he had a sort of understanding and grasp of of the Papua New Guinea sort of dynamics of, especially the male role.
Are you comfortable saying what the purpose of this documentary is, or do you want to keep it on the round?
Oh, it's a short film. Sorry, it's been out for like a year almost. It's called One Talk. If you go on YouTube and you type in One Talk, and you type in Dmitry Kamarov, it'll pop up. It's a very short film. But he did that one specifically for the European Short Film Award circuit.
Oh, so this was for an awards thing, but he just did it out of, for fun. He made it.
Yeah, pretty much, because, he wants to, people, this is like Western world, mentality. Yeah, it's being able to work hard, doing one thing, and then on the side you can procure something from a hobby, which is what he wanted to do. So he worked with this brewing company here, and when he was just before he's about to leave the last 3 or 4 months, he's like,
made a film.
So we did that for him. So if you haven't seen that, you go on YouTube and you type in One Talk, and there should be something popping up with a Russian name. Kamarov, and it'll be there. You can watch that. So we helped produce that one. That's a short film as well.
And right now, use F Studios, right?
So with F Studios, that's with my wife and myself. We're running that. Well, she owns it. I just help her. I'm more or less the technical producer on that one. Or I would say, development producer. Basically, I fix up a story till it's ready to be presented to potential sponsors and funders. That's where I am right now. But right now, we're working with particular Papua New Guinean talent. I can't say who yet because I might jinx the project. Plus, I could probably have to get the permission before I mention names. So I didn't know, you know the parables that we have in our culture, and that. So I'll just say that we're in the midst of getting some more sponsorship for that. But essentially, we're trying to produce a TV show, PNG drama TV show, where we are producing it 100% ourselves, Papua New Guineans. We have all Papua New Guinean cast, and we are
behind the camera and
in front of the camera, and we're trying to do it with PNG sponsorship rather than going overseas and looking for funding or whatever. Which is not a bad thing necessarily, but we'd like to have a real authentic PNG experience, and we'd like to show people that it can be done without having strings attached.
Not make it seem like you have to do it by going overseas. Yeah, that's a good thing to have. Like create our own little mini ecosystem by which things can, because like every other like pipeline that exists around the world to produce content is like sort of internal.
Of course.
And then it's nice that you're with your project. I mean I've only sort of came across it that one time when we first met, but I was pretty like impressed and happy to see that like something is going on.
Yeah, I mean like us doing this podcast now, hopefully the fans out there will see it and share it and add put the positive comments out, constructive comments out. Black comment I didn't know. No offense.
No,
I mean, it's a conversation, right? We have to have it, and it has to be had. It has to be continuously going on. It's a dialogue. It has to be had. Otherwise, nothing will change. We'll have nothing. We'll still be consuming. I feel like I wanna call out Filipino drama because here's the funny thing. I'm the person at TV1 who suggested Filipino drama.
Yeah.
But I wasn't serious, and then somebody took it up. After I left, they took it up, and I was like.
When you said the dubbing too, right? That was also your idea.
I mean, I mentioned in passing, but obviously, like people in the industry, so I won't take credit for the dubbing. That wasn't me. I might have mentioned it, but that wasn't me. But if it was me, then I deny it. But, like I know people who are involved with the dubbing, so I can't really necessarily say anything bad about them. But I mean, it's at least it's something, Some talent is being produced through that. Voice acting too requires.
I mean, obviously, not to what I mean. Like I mean, me is like in terms of Asian content, I watch like Japanese anime. Now Korean too. They've been producing some good stuff.
I love Korean stuff. I used to be in the anime a lot when I was younger. I just don't have the patience for it now. I suppose.
Yeah,
I love it. Although I like the classics. I love the classics. Most of the show. Where's the ornaments? All those ones.
I think to finish off. Yeah. To finish off, like what are stuff that you enjoy? Like just as personally, like what you like watching.
I love movies.
Okay, guys, my memory cut off for a second there, but anyway, coming back to it, we were finishing off the list of your top 3. I guess I whittled it down from 5 to 3. So what were your top 3 movies from last year?
So I'm gonna have to go with Avatar 2: Way of Water, because James Cameron is very gifted, and he came to Papua New Guinea, and I edited a video that features him in an interview session with some friends of mine from the PNG Motion Picture Group over on Facebook. So if you don't know about that video, or you haven't seen it, because it's relatively new, please go across there on the Facebook and have a look at that. My second movie that I really found...
Wait, what was the relevant thing about that video?
Which one?
The one with James Cameron.
Sorry. So he says, not to spoil it, but he basically said something about Papua New Guinea inspiring Avatar or something like that. You have to go and watch the video. I might be paraphrasing. I'm not paraphrasing properly. So Avatar is definitely the first one. The close second, which will probably end up being my favorite, probably by the end of 2023, when I think about it a bit more, and the spectacle of Avatar wears off, is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I love that movie too. That's my personal favorite, actually.
Michelle Yeoh she's a queen.
Awesome, yes, she's a queen. And I think we were trying to get his name, but we kept forgetting the guy who plays her husband in that movie.
Yeah.
He did a pretty good job too.
Basically, Shorty from Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
In that Temple of Doom, the first Indiana.
Put a picture.
Second Indiana Jones. That's the guy. And Goonies. Yeah. The Goonies.
Long story short, if you love sci-fi movies, that's one to check out. Honestly.
Absolutely. And my third pick is Wakanda Forever.
Wakanda Forever.
Yes.
Okay. Like for myself, I can't really say. Well, definitely, Everything Everywhere All at Once was number 1, and then number 2. I haven't seen Avatar yet, but somehow, based on everything I've heard, I feel like it would be up there. And honestly, I've become disillusioned with a lot of Marvel stuff. And normally, I would put a Marvel movie on this list, but none of the Marvel movies that came out last year made me very happy. Yeah. I did like Top Gun Maverick, I have to say, actually, personally.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
So I guess that would be... Yeah, I don't know if it's my number 2, actually. And then number 3. I'm trying to think of number 3, but I can't. You know what? Maybe I'll edit this in post. Because I can't think of it now.
Because I edited it in the bio.
Yeah. And I also wanted to ask you about like gaming, because I'm someone who loves playing video games. So, do you game at all, or what kind of games do you enjoy if you do?
So I'm actually a gamer, a long-time gamer. You know, I started right back in the late '80s with an Atari 2600.
Oh,
8-bit system. Your phone, your little brother's phone, your little sister's phone was more powerful than that system was back in the day.
yeah.
But this thing addictive as hell. It had Centipede. It had like asteroids. I think it was called asteroids.
Space Invaders.
Space Invaders. Space Invaders. That's a big one. Yeah. So I started from there, and I pretty much played on every console. Like on most consoles, used most of them anyway. But I have a PS4, or at least my kid does, and I play on it occasionally. And I think the last game I played that I probably enjoyed on that was the last game I played that I really enjoyed it was a solo experience. It was a community experience. Yeah, was probably the one you mentioned.
No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. That was something I would have liked to have done more, but I'm so busy these days. But the other one I really enjoyed, and I was having fun with my kids, but they were being annoying about it, was Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. I mean, for me, you guys know I love strategy games, and I pretty much make content based on that on my channel, so you guys can tell from that. So to end off, is there anything that is going on right now that you'd like to, or any sort of like stuff that you're doing that you'd like to make give awareness to? I guess.
Sure. So if you didn't tell already, myself, I do a lot of volunteer stuff with the Mosby Arts Theatre. If you don't know what that is, it's a 100-plus-year-old organization, a theatrical club, more or less, where volunteers participate, like myself. We come and participate in productions, different activities. And in a couple of months' time, we're going to be having Arts Awareness Week, or Arts Awareness Month, which is basically a youth-driven platform where there's going to be a lot of shows and performances by different people within the arts sector that are youthful, within young people. So you should definitely come along for that. I'm sure.
Is it an annual thing?
Yes, it's going to be an annual thing. They had a variation of it last year, and they're doing more of a bigger.
Have they settled on a month that they're going to do it yet?
I think they've got one, but you'd have to go along to the page. Okay. Arts Awareness.
If we know, then I'll put the
I'll
put that link.
F Studios, you also put that as well. F Studios, go to F Studios if you want to learn more about the Mosby Arts Theatre in terms of the other productions and stuff happening as well, and Arts Awareness Month, which I mentioned just now as well. And I'm pretty much involved with that as well. We're also working on, at F Studios, producing a television show, a Papua New Guinea television show created by Papua New Guineans to cater for Papua New Guineans.
Funded by Papua
New Guineans. Because I know we can do it ourselves, and we don't need to have other people, stakeholders coming in and breathing down our throats and pushing their own global agendas. And we have local agendas that need to be addressed.
Yeah, so there you go. Awesome. All right, then I guess we'll end up the interview more or less today. But yeah, I'll definitely have you on in the future, something to talk more about like content creation. And thank you very much for appearing on.
Thank you for having me as well.
So for now, this is BonzEye signing out. Catch you all later.
See you later.